Okay guys, so in this video we are going to have a look at the action bar and how we've implemented that. So let's get into it. So basically all I've done is to add support to click this little icon here and up goes our action bar basically. And the way that the action bar works in like the real version of Slack is that you have this side menu here that can have different, it will have different content. If I go to my little channel here and if I click a thread, for example, you'll see that hey, there's actually a thread section here. And if there are different versions of this action menu or sidebar or whatever we want to call it. And so I started by just making one or two of these placeholder sidebars or action bars or whatever we want to call them. And that's about it really. So let's have a look at the code. Later on we will actually implement like that feature and stuff like starting a thread or adding to a thread and stuff like that. But let's have a look here. So first and foremost we have added a new module called action bar. And this is our action bar, and basically it's just another component where we have, well, this is fairly standard now hopefully, so we can just kind of skim through that. So we have this function called close action bar, and basically all that's going to do is that if we look at the markup here, the action bar is just this header section here with a header title, or like a title with a button next to it, which is going to be the action close, well, the close button, which is this section here. I click it and hey, it closes. That's about it really. That's all the magic there is to that. And then we have this thing here where I've added a reference to a div that is within the component, which is basically just going to be the place where we add content, because this is one of those parent type of components where you're going to want to be able to switch out the child or the content of this component kind of on the fly, because in this section or in this scenario we're kind of clicking here and we want to show a thread. And what happens if I were to search, for example, for files? Well, then the file search results would be outlined in this component instead. And so basically what we want is to render different versions of this component, like the parent, the sidebar, the action bar itself should stay the same, but the content should be different every time we do make an interaction. And that's why we do that. So on the onEvent function, we're basically just checking if the type of the action is to open the action bar. We grab the action, like the title from the action, and then we just grab the first child of our content area. Now the first render, that's just going to be like a text node, because we added a little bit of an empty string here. And then we're simply going to replace that child with the component that we include in the action that we dispatch. And then we will show the action bar. And if the action is to close the action bar, then we are simply going to set display none, and that's going to be the end of it. And with this approach we can have multiple components, and we can actually make the behavior whatever we want. We can load whichever component we want. So here is the basic styles for that, nothing super advanced. We have some new actions, open action bar, close action bars, and we have the events, and then we have the bootstrapping code, which is just basically to grab data-js action bar. If we look at the index.html, we'll see here that hey, we have this aside here, which is just this target element, like the root element that we are going to grab on the page, and that's basically what we're doing up here. And then we create the action bar, we set it on the window object, and then we can create the element, and that leaves us with a node, and then we replace the current action bar element that we grabbed with this node instead. And then we have two different components, which is because we know that we are going to want to be able to search for files that we've uploaded and stuff like that. So we have a file component, and we have thread component. And since these are pretty much just isolated to the action bar, I've added this folder here where we're simply adding like the different content areas like file, thread. We might have others in the future, but the stuff that's basically going to be the content of our action bar. And they, of course, they have their own like bootstrapping code, so we can actually initialize them and have them on the window object so that we can actually reach them if we actually need to add some code inside of them. And then finally we have this code that we've added to our chat, and that is basically that when we fire the open thread action, we're simply going to create a title, and then we're going to create an object that holds the title and the component, and that's basically just going to be to create the element where we're going to just instantiate the thread component and create a new text element from it, or like a node, and then basically we're going to just dispatch that data and grab it inside of the action bar and set it to that value. And that's about it, really. Nothing super advanced, I hope. Anywho, I think that this is pretty much done now, and that means that that's ready for testing. And now we'll just have a look at the next thing. So we have quite a few things to pick from, but I think that the next thing is to actually start to store some data. So we're going to create the general channel and actually be able to write some messages and store them. So let's have a look at that.